Kenya to Colombia, from Iraq to Korea, in slums, in schools, in prisons, and in theaters. Every day, people gather at TEDx events around the world to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. Today, you are part of a global conversation about our shared future. So what is this TEDx? TEDx is an initiative of the TED Conference, a nonprofit devoted to ideas worth spreading. We grant free licenses to allow TED-like events to spread globally. This event today is based on the TED Conference format and ideals, but is independently organized by your local community. So please make sure to thank the team of volunteers who worked so hard on today's event. It's their ideas, dedication, and time that made it all possible. It's they who booked all the speakers, and the views you'll hear today are those of those speakers, not necessarily of TEDs. But we hope their talks spark an exciting conversation among you. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for openness and for critical thinking, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you'll take out. And now, on with the show.
Welcome to the first ever St. Thomas Aquinas TEDx event. We are thrilled to be hosting the event here at St. Thomas Aquinas, and it's currently being live streamed throughout our entire high school. It's curated from the St. Thomas Aquinas students sharing their inspiring visions, and our hope is that TEDx St. Thomas Aquinas brings together our unique community, our leaders' voices, their powerful ideas, dialogue, their extraordinary talents, and their passion to share their creativity. Our very first speaker today is Courtney Butterworth, a student here at St. Thomas. She's a proud member of the class of 2017. She writes for the Hollywood Gazette as a teen correspondent and contributes to Teen Link, which is a Sun Sentinel publication that's written for teens by teens. She's also one of the youngest volunteers ever to be brought on board with the Legal Aid at Broward County, which is a nonprofit law firm which helps those who simply can't afford legal advice. She's going to be attending the University of Pennsylvania in the fall, and I'm happy to welcome Courtney Butterworth.
I want to start off today by asking you all one question. What do you want when you grow up? That's a question that I've been asked over and over throughout my life since childhood. But it's a question that I didn't begin to question the meaning of until I began working the summer after my freshman year of high school. Naturally, I had always answered the question of what I wanted to be when I grew up with an attorney, because I saw that as a way to give a voice to people who I felt were underrepresented. So the summer after my freshman year, I began looking for work at a law firm, but I kept hearing no. Either because I didn't have a law degree, or because I didn't have a college degree, or because I was simply too young. But eventually, I came into contact with a woman who gave me some advice. She told me that while she couldn't hire me because I was just too young, she had a friend who worked for Legal Aid of Broward County. Legal Aid is a nonprofit law firm that seeks to give free legal counsel to people who would otherwise be unable to afford it. And they were in great need of volunteers. So she gave me the contact information for her friend, and 3 weeks later, I was preparing for my first day at Legal Aid. And I started to think about age representation as I was laying out what I would wear for my first day of work. As I was looking at the suit I would wear, I started to think about how young I might be compared to everyone else in the office. Because that suit I would be wearing for my first day was a suit that I had gotten from the kids section of Kohl's. And I figured everybody else working there probably was not shopping in the kids section. And on my first day, I was proved correct. People kept asking me where I went to school, I think because they were trying to figure out how young I really was. And I kept answering St. Thomas, thinking that then they would make the connection of, okay, she goes to high school. But then I kept having to field other questions like what my major was or when I was taking the bar exam, because when I was saying St. Thomas, they were assuming I meant St. Thomas University or St. Thomas Law School. Another thing I learned on my first day at Legal Aid was where exactly I would be working. I would be assisting in the Broward Lawyers Care Department of Legal Aid. Broward Lawyers Care houses Legal Aid's telephone advice hotline, so potential clients call when they can't afford an attorney for a legal crisis. They leave a message, and that message is then returned by a volunteer. That volunteer then asks questions, performs an intake interview, and basically creates an entire case file that is then given to a pro bono attorney who calls that client back and advises them on how to best solve their issue independently on their own, and they give that advice for free. But I definitely wouldn't be starting working on the hotline because that had only been done by college and law school interns. Instead, I would be doing paperwork and timekeeping. But my desk was right next to the hotline, so I was always listening to the way those college and law school interns answered the calls and asked questions. And one day, there was an intern on the phone who was new, and he was having some difficulties asking questions and figuring out what was important in the case. So he posed a question to the office of what he should ask the client next. And I told him what I thought he should do, because I had heard the interns asking the same questions over and over. But the day after I had told him what he should ask, my supervisor told me it was time for me to start taking calls on the hotline myself. And fast forward 3 years to today. I'm still a volunteer at the Broward Lawyers Care Department of Legal Aid, except now, instead of listening to those college and law school interns I once sat next to, I've assisted in their training. When I was asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, I knew I wanted to do something with law, but I assumed that I couldn't start to be anything with regards to law until I had graduated law school. But at Legal Aid, I had started to be something. But in order to really understand how I started viewing this question, we need to rewind back 3 years to when I was starting at Legal Aid, because at that time, I was also realizing something about my community. I'm from Hollywood, Florida, and in Hollywood, we have a paper called the Hollywood Gazette, which is a free community newspaper that's distributed throughout the city. And I'm very proud of my city, and I'm very interested in what's going on, so I was always reading the paper. But I started to realize that I felt my voice wasn't present in the paper. They weren't writing about teens, they weren't appealing to teens. So I wrote to the publisher asking her if I could write an article about something that pertained to teens in Hollywood. She was actually very enthusiastic, and she agreed with the idea. So what started as one single article became a series of articles written by myself, the teen correspondent. But what I was doing actually isn't that uncommon for our age group. According to the American Press Institute, there's something unique about the way teens view the news. When people in the teen age group see a problem in their community, say a problem they've read in a community newspaper, they're the most likely to go to multiple news sources to try to learn about the root of the problem. It seems that teens' love for drama pertains to the way that they view the news. When we see a problem, we tend to go to the most news sources because we want to see what's causing the problem. We want to know everything about it. We would call this digging deeper. And that's exactly what I decided to do when I noticed a bridge between the work I was doing at Legal Aid and the work I was doing at the Hollywood Gazette. At Legal Aid, on the telephone advice hotline, I realized we kept getting calls about people experiencing homelessness trying to apply for Section 8 housing. But a lot of those people were from my city of Hollywood. So I asked the publisher of the Hollywood Gazette if I could write a series of informative articles about the issue of homelessness and everything that I was learning about it, because I wanted to share that information with my community. She actually agreed, and I sought out to talk to everyone in my community I could who was affected by the problem or knew something about it or was trying to help people. So I spoke with a social worker who worked for the Hollywood Police Department. I spoke with the supervisor of the Broward Outreach Center, one of the largest homeless shelters in my area, who had once been homeless himself. And I spoke to the Broward Outreach Center's alumni group, people who had been homeless for years to months, but were now out of the cycle and would meet together to encourage each other and to become an advocate for people still in the cycle. And when I was speaking with these people, I was learning so much about the problem. But there was something I wanted to do. I wanted to do something more. So I reached out to every person running for mayor of Hollywood and asked them to draft a plan on what they would do to help people experiencing homelessness if they were elected. And they actually all responded. Their plans went online on the Hollywood Gazette website and in the print version of the Hollywood Gazette right before the local elections, so people could really make an informed decision about who they wanted leading their city. Those plans now allow whoever's elected to be held accountable to what they said they would be doing. This was me when I started to realize that I should be asking myself a different question. I had only been asking myself what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I started asking myself what I wanted to be doing currently. I realized that I didn't need to make excuses for why I couldn't start making a positive impact on my community now. I didn't need to wait until I got a college degree. I didn't need to wait till I got a law degree. I could start doing things right now to reach those goals that I'd once only set for the future. But it would be naive of me to say that I was able to do all of these things on my own. A big part of why I was able to accomplish these things was because people viewed me not as a 15-year-old, but as someone who was capable of making change. Unfortunately, not everyone shares that mindset. According to the University of Nevada, Reno, after interviewing American adults and American teens, 61% of American adults do not believe teens can be trusted, think they're disrespectful, and don't think that they should be trusted in regards to any occupation. And although they may think that teens have their headphones in and aren't really listening to them, they are. Because only 20% of teens interviewed said that they felt adults in their community valued them and the impacts they could make. And this is really frightening when we look at just how much of an impact teens can make on their community. They're giving hours upon hours to their community, and they're providing age representation, diverse viewpoints. That doesn't mean that companies need to fire all the old people working for them and only hire young people. It just means that they might want to look to another viewpoint. Because teens who are working are learning responsibility. They're learning to be held accountable for their own actions. And teens volunteering in their community are more likely to graduate from high school, and they're more likely to continue to help their community as time goes on. And I know it seems really simple to stand up here and say that you should just start letting more teens do more work. But it actually is just that simple, and it goes all the way back to a single question. The question that I began by asking all of you today: what do you want to be when you grow up? When you ask someone what they want to be when they grow up, you're insinuating that they can't be anything until they've grown up. They can't make an impact on their community till they have a college degree or a graduate degree or they have a serious career. But that's simply not true. But that question is having an impact on teens. According to the U.S. Department of Education Center for National Education Statistics, there was a study conducted on teens who were asked to volunteer and teens who were never asked to volunteer. Of the teens who were asked to volunteer, 93% did. Of teens who were never asked to volunteer, only 24% did. This makes everything seem really simple. It all comes down to asking a question. So in conclusion, we need to stop asking people, especially young people, what they want to be when they grow up, and start asking them what they want to be now, what they want to be as they grow up. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Our next performer, Jose Francisco, has been playing piano since he was 6 years old and has been training for the last 12 years under the guidance of a Juilliard School of Music teacher. Although Jose has studied all periods of music, from Baroque to contemporary, his favorite period, both to study and to perform, is the Romantic period, as exemplified by his current Chopin-dominant repertoire. Aside from a piano career, he's also a performing magician. He's a nationally ranked extemporaneous speaker and a volunteer at the Cleveland Clinic, Florida. Jose will be attending the Stanford University in the fall. Jose Francisco. Thank you. Our next speaker tonight, Janie Guthrie. Janie is an oratory captain of the forensics and debate team here at St. Thomas Aquinas, and she's currently ranked 3rd in the state for her event. She's also the president of her 501c3 nonprofit organization called The Learning Room, through which she and a group of high school students tutor English language learners in the surrounding elementary schools. Janie enjoys volunteer work that involves working with special needs care and hopes to pursue a career in pharmacology and genetics. Let's welcome to the stage, Janie.
With college application season just around the corner, I can say I'm pretty willing to do about anything to enhance my college resume. I have to do things to set myself apart from everybody else, right? So last summer, I became a mom to like 15 kids. Actually, I was a camp counselor, but they're pretty related. I was in charge of multiple children for 24 hours at a time. They referred to me as the lady with the snacks, and I had to pretend that I didn't have a favorite child. But I did. Her name was Mimi. Mimi was 6 years old and insisted that she wear her frozen princess dress everywhere. To breakfast, art, the pool. So when I politely asked Mimi to take off her Elsa dress so that she could go in the water, the response I received was anything but enchanting. Somehow Mimi managed to incorporate the N-word and the D-word into one sentence when she screamed in my face, "No, you ding-dong." I know what you're thinking. They grow up so fast. But later, when I learned that Mimi can't swim, I realized that I was, in fact, a ding-dong. You see, I had mistaken Mimi's no for defiance, when really she was just telling me what she wanted and needed from me, to not go into the water. And I feared that these days, because we have a misconstrued notion of what the word no means, we become far too willing to drown ourselves in the burdens and responsibilities that come with the negligence of this word, in turn causing ourselves to feel even more frustrated, guilty, and voiceless. Whether it's, sure, I'll go out with you, or yeah, why not just one more drink? Or even, yes, I'm okay. Even when we're not, we have replaced no with a universal form of yes that makes the word no foreign to our own ears. And it starts when we're young. Professor of Behavioral Sciences at Baylor College, John Sargent, explains that when toddlers say no, they're asserting themselves as individuals and choosing to do only what they want to do, a skill so easily mastered by 2-year-olds, yet so difficult for all of us. So today we'll look at the misconceptions surrounding the word no and realize that first, we have trouble saying no, and second, we have trouble hearing no. Then finally, we'll devise some solutions that even Mimi can't say no to. Now, just like I wanted to enhance my college resume by taking a summer course, high school students across the nation are struggling to balance their classes, internship applications, and family obligations. Jesse Matthews, a psychotherapist at the Center for Psychological Services, explains that you want to boost your career by taking every opportunity that comes your way. But this breeds the feeling that you can't say no. And when we spread ourselves too thin, quality begins to suffer. Instead of succeeding at a few things, we find ourselves failing at many things. No was designed to help us, not hinder us. A 2009 study published by the Los Angeles Times found that when children asked their parents to do homework for them, 1 out of every 2 parents said yes. And while all parents have noble intentions, a yes-man mentality can unintentionally weaken the boundaries of the parent-child relationship. Always hearing yes can hinder a child from dealing with frustration later in life, or it can recreate the cycle so that the child grows up incapable of saying no. Now, I witnessed this firsthand every Wednesday at the Riverland Library across the street from my high school, St. Thomas Aquinas. You see, last year I started a 501c3 nonprofit through which a group of high school students and myself tutor English language learners in surrounding elementary schools. English language learners, for those of you who don't know, are students whose primary language is Spanish, meaning that they have trouble comprehending and reading in English. So our job as the tutor is to make sure that they understand what they're reading. But oftentimes I notice that when I ask a student, Do you know what that word means? They respond with, yes, of course I know what that means. And later on in the passage, when they still can't understand or pronounce the word correctly, I realize that it's not because they're disinterested in the lesson, but rather because they're just too embarrassed to say, no, I don't know what that means. But how can we expect our children to think of no as this scary and embarrassing word and then later in life answer some of the most important questions we will ever be asked? For example, will you marry me? Research conducted by clinical social worker Jennifer Gavon revealed that 34% of divorced couples knew their marriage wouldn't last. But on their wedding day, during their vows, they just couldn't say no. They claimed it would have been too complicated to call off the ceremony and dreaded the disappointment from their friends and family members. Consequently, they sacrificed their happiness, all to say, I do, instead of, I don't. So we think that no is this scary and intimidating word, but oftentimes we also don't say no because we don't want others to disapprove of us. Businesses thrive by taking advantage of this. Compliance psychology is a billion-dollar industry through which books and seminars actually teach other people to manipulate our answers into changing from no to yes. We feel guilty for denying someone our purchase or business, but ultimately it's our money and our decision. The need for no is exemplified through the doctor-patient dynamic. In 2011, Physicians Weekly reported that many doctors just can't say no to patients who ask for prescriptions or tests that they do not need. And unfortunately, because many of these patients suffer from addictions, they threaten to just find new doctors willing to prescribe them their desired medications, fearing that their patients' disapproval will cost them business. Many doctors give in and prescribe deathly drugs to their patients. In fact, the American Psychological Association estimates that 500,000 of these patients die every year due to the overcompensation of unnecessary prescription drugs. We have become a myriad of people pleasers. We no longer say no, so we no longer hear no. Now, I know at the beginning of the speech I was joking, saying I was only doing this to boost my college resume, but really, I'm doing this speech because I want to act as an advocate for all of those who are either too afraid or too oppressed to stand up for themselves and say no. So this speech is dedicated to the 70% of teens who fall victim to the peer pressures of drugs and alcohol, for the man or woman who is raped every 2 minutes in the United States, for the 325,000 little boys and girls who will be sexually abused before they turn 12. Of course, I understand that in many of these situations, even saying no isn't enough. But it's where we start. Now, the solution is not to just say no more often. We need to become aware of what the word actually means. Saying no does not make us negative, it does not make us insensitive, and it does not make us closed-minded. Saying no gives us individuality. It gives us the time and space to do things that matter to us, and it lets us stand up here and realize that we have control, power, and a voice. Because no is a very small word, we have to start with the very small things. Say no to the 3 extra hours of paperwork, to the person at the mall kiosk, or to the doctor who misdiagnoses you. 63-year-old Elijah Willems was diagnosed with a fatal lung cancer and told that he needed chemotherapy in order to live an extra 3 months. But when the chemo became too painful for Elijah, he felt like he shouldn't speak up because his doctor was in charge. It wasn't until his 3rd round of chemo that Elijah finally told his doctor, "No, I'm tired and I need to stop." Elijah returned home peacefully 1 week later, surrounded by his friends and family. You know, the people who are closest to us deserve honesty. We feel like we have to tell them exactly what they want to hear. But don't they deserve more than that? To hear what we feel and what we care about. No doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. It can be the beginning of a true and honest dialogue. One where we can all communicate honestly. So yeah, Mimi wore her princess dress the entire week of camp. But she wasn't being sassy, she just knew what she wanted. And she wasn't afraid to stand up for it. Is there anything wrong with that? No.
Thank you, Janie. Our next performer is Ian Gordon. He's been playing guitar since he was 8 years old and was classically trained by Juan Carlos Vera. His favorite classical song is called Canarios. He participates in the St. Thomas Aquinas Marching Band, where he plays clarinet, and he hopes to attend Juilliard for music after he graduates from St. Thomas. Ian Gordon.
In the summer of 2011, as a tourist, I visited the rainforest to Borneo for the very first time. And as you might imagine, it was the overwhelming sounds of the forest that struck me the most. There's this constant cacophony of noise. Some things actually do stick out. For example, this here is a big bird, a hornbill, a rhinoceros hornbill. This buzzing is a cicada. This is a family of gibbons that's actually singing to each other over a great distance. The place where this was recorded was in fact a gibbon reserve, which is why you can hear so many of them. But in fact, the most important noise that was coming out of the forest that time was one that I didn't notice. And in fact, nobody there had actually noticed it. So as I said, this was a gibbon reserve. They spend most of their time rehabilitating gibbons, but they also have to spend a lot of their time protecting their area from illegal logging that takes place on the side. And so if we take the sound of the forest, and we actually turn down the gibbons, and the insects, and the rest, in the background the entire time, in the recording that you heard, was the sound of a chainsaw at great distance. They had 3 full-time guards who were posted around this sanctuary, whose job was in fact to guard against illegal logging. And one day, we went walking, as tourists, out into the forest, and within 5 minutes walk, we stumbled upon somebody who was just sawing a tree down, 5 minutes walk, a few hundred meters from the ranger station. They hadn't been able to hear the chainsaws, because as you heard, the forest is very, very loud. It struck me as quite unacceptable, right? That in this modern time, just a few hundred meters away from a ranger station, in a sanctuary, that in fact nobody could hear somebody when a chainsaw gets fired up. I mean, it sounds impossible. But in fact, it was quite true. So how do we stop illegal logging, right? It's really tempting as an engineer always to come up with a high-tech, super crazy high-tech solution. But in fact, you're in the rainforest. It has to be simple. It has to be scalable. And so in fact, what we also noticed over there was that everything we needed was already there. We could build a system that would allow us to stop this using what's already there. Who was there? What was already in the forest? Well, we had people. We had this group there that was dedicated, 3 full-time guards that was dedicated to go and stop it. But they just needed to know what was happening out in the forest. The real surprise, this is the big one, is that there was connectivity out in the forest. There was cell phone service way out in the middle of nowhere. We're talking hundreds of miles from the nearest road. There's certainly no electricity, but they had very good cell phone service. These people in the towns were on Facebook all the time. They're surfing the web on their phones. And this sort of got me thinking that, in fact, it would be possible to use the sounds of the forest, pick up the sounds of chainsaws programmatically, because people can't hear them, and send an alert. But you have to have a device to go up in the trees, right? So if we can use some device to listen to the sounds of the forest, connect to the cell phone network that's there, and send an alert to the people on the ground, perhaps we could have a solution to this issue for them. But in fact, let's take a moment to talk about saving the rainforest, because it's something that we've definitely all heard about forever. People in my generation have heard about saving the rainforest since we were kids, and seems that the message has never changed. We got to change, we got to save the rainforest. It's super urgent. This many football fields have been destroyed yesterday, and yet here we are. Today, about half of the rainforest remains, and we have potentially more urgent problems like climate change. But in fact, this is a little-known fact that I didn't realize at the time. Deforestation accounts for more greenhouse gas than all of the world's planes, trains, cars, trucks, and ships combined. It's the second highest contributor to climate change. Also, according to Interpol, as much as 90% of the logging that takes place in the rainforest is illegal logging, right? Like the illegal logging that we saw. So if we can help people in the forest enforce the rules that are there, then in fact we could eat heavily into this 17% and potentially have a major impact in the short term. It might just be the cheapest, fastest way to fight climate change. And so here's the system that you imagine, right? It looks super high-tech. The moment a sound is heard, sound of a chainsaw is heard in the forest, device picks up the sound of the chainsaw, sends an alert through the standard GSM network that's already there to a ranger in the field who can in fact show up in real time and halt the logging. It's no more about going out and finding a tree that's been cut. It's not about seeing a tree from a satellite, an area that's been clear-cut. It's about real-time intervention, right? So I said it was the cheapest and fastest way to do it, but in fact, actually, as you saw, they weren't able to do it, so it may not be so cheap and fast. But if the device is in the trees, were actually cell phones, it could be pretty cheap. Cell phones are thrown away by the hundreds of millions every year. Hundreds of millions in the US alone, not counting the rest of the world, which of course we should do. But in fact, cell phones are great. They're full of sensors. They can listen to the sounds of the forest. We do have to protect them. We have to put them in this box that you see here. And we do have to power them. Powering them is one of the greater engineering challenges that we had to deal with, because powering a cell phone under a tree canopy, any sort of solar power under a tree canopy, was an as yet unsolved problem. And that's this unique solar panel design that you see here, which in fact is built also from recycled byproducts of an industrial process. These are strips that are cut down. So this is me putting it all together in my parents' garage, actually. Thanks very much to them for allowing me to do that. As you can see, this is a device up in a tree. What you can see from here, perhaps, is that they are pretty well obscured up in the tree canopy at a distance. That's important because although they are able to hear chainsaw noises up to 1 kilometer in the distance, allowing them to cover about 3 square kilometers, if this one were to take them, it would make the area unprotected. So, does it actually work? Well, to test it, we took it back to Indonesia, not the same place, but another place, to another gibbon reserve that was threatened daily by illegal logging. On the very second day, it picked up illegal chainsaw noises. We were able to get a real-time alert. I got an email on my phone. Actually, we just climbed the tree. Everyone had just gotten back down. All these guys are smoking cigarettes. And then I get an email, and we all quiet down. And in fact, you can hear the chainsaw really, really faint in the background, but no one had noticed it until that moment. And so then we took off to actually stop these loggers. I was pretty nervous. This is the moment where we've actually arrived close to where the loggers are. This is the moment you can see where I'm actually regretting perhaps the entire endeavor. I'm not really sure what's on the other side of this hill. That guy is much braver than I am, Shenny. Okay, but he went, so I had to go walking up. And in fact, we made it over the hill and interrupted the loggers in the act. For them, it was such a surprise. They had never, ever been interrupted before, that it was such an impressive event for them that we've heard from our partners they have not been back since. They were, in fact, great guys. They showed us how the entire operation works. And what they really convinced us on the spot was that if you can show up in real time and stop people, it's enough of a deterrent, they won't come back. So, thank you. Word of this spread, possibly because we told a lot of people. And in fact, then some really amazing stuff started to happen. People from around the world started to send us emails, phone calls. What we saw was that people throughout Asia, people throughout Africa, people throughout South America, they told us that they could use it too. And what's most important, what we'd found that we thought might be exceptional, in the forest there was pretty good cell phone service. That was not exceptional, we were told. And that particularly is on the periphery of the forests that are most under threat. And then something really amazing happened, which was that people started sending us their own old cell phones. So in fact, what we have now is a system where we can use people on the ground, people who are already there, who can both improve and use the existing connectivity, and we're using old cell phones that are being sent to us with people around the world that want their phones to be doing something else in their afterlife, so to speak. And if the rest of the device can be completely recycled, then we believe it's an entirely upcycled device. So again, this didn't come because of any sort of high-tech solution. It just came from using what's already there. And I'm thoroughly convinced that if it's not phones, that there's always going to be enough there that you can build similar solutions that can be very effective in new contexts. Thank you very much.
Our next performance will be a musical piece by Skylar Hooley, Shalia Moscat, and Sasha Lincock. Thank you. Our next guest speaker, Dr. Jonathan L. Best, is the Instruction and Outreach Librarian at St. Thomas University Library. He coordinates the library's information literacy initiatives and the library's public events. He's also the adjunct instructor of the School of Theology and Ministry. Jonathan received his PhD in practical theology from St. Thomas University. In addition to his work at the university, he frequently reviews books for several journals, including Choice, Current Reviews for Academic Libraries, and Reviews in Religion and Theology. Jonathan has presented papers to numerous theological conferences and meetings, and he's also an ordained minister of the original Free Will Baptist Convention of North Carolina. His research interests include homonoetics and postmodern philosophy.
Good morning. Thinking about this talk, I was thinking about the concept of post-truth. Now, if you remember the year 2016, not so long ago, 2016 was remarkable in several ways, but one of these being the idea of post-truth. Now, this got a lot of traction when Oxford dictionaries named post-truth the word of the year. And this irked a lot of people, caused a lot of confusion and such. What do you mean by post-truth? Well, post-truth, as defined by Oxford dictionaries, is where objective facts have less relevance than in swaying public opinion or influencing public opinion than, say, personal beliefs or convictions. We saw this phenomenon of post-truth, especially during the election cycle, and especially during the idea of fake news. Fake news became hugely popular among Facebook and Twitter, where people were sharing articles that had no basis in reality, essentially. And fake news actually outpaced news in terms of what was being shared across social media. Now, this is not just the only thing that was happening with post-truth, but also among our politicians, among both sides. There seems to be a lack of clarity in terms of information. We are continually bombarded with all sorts of types of information from a variety of different sources, especially across social media. It can be really hard to filter out this information, to understand what is truth, what is opinion, and how do you discern, how do you make the right choices for picking news, for understanding news, for acquiring information so that we can better become more educated men and women. As I was thinking about this from both perspectives of a librarian, that's my day job, and a theologian, I kept thinking about what does it mean to be religious and post-truth, me being, as a theologian, a religious person. And I also was thinking about this in terms of being a librarian, because this is what I deal with on a daily basis. Students come to me looking to find articles, looking to find information so they can write better papers. And often we think that, hey, I just go to the internet, whatever I find is valid and true. And what I find is most often is that students, too, have trouble discerning what is truth and what is not truth. Now, this can affect us in many ways. The amount of information that we're exposed to is completely remarkable. You can just think about 30 years ago. The idea that I could have a device like my cell phone, type in a search term, and have virtual access to information past and present across a wide variety of topics, millions and millions of articles, it really seems still like the stuff of science fiction. I'm totally astonished by the things that I can do and that we can all do in finding information. We should be living in a golden age of information. In many ways we are, but how does post-truth exist in an age where we have information on anything we want? Now, part of this is the way that we're bombarded with information. I can go on Facebook and I can be reading about new solar technologies and new green technology and things about our solar system and universe, and then 30 seconds later be watching a cat video, which there's nothing wrong with that. But we are bombarded with all types of information, and it's sometimes hard to filter what is relevant, what's not relevant, and what I can use to further and better myself as a human being. Now, I was thinking about this as also a theologian, and I was reminded of an article that Karl Rahner, a prominent Catholic 20th century theologian, produced about in the mid-20th century. Karl Rahner passed away in the early 1980s, before the internet. Karl Rahner was looking at the ways that disparate information that were encountered and all the types of various sources. And it's really hard to take all the information that we're exposed to and put it into some sort of system or organize it in some way. Sometimes it just feels like an unfiltered mess. Some of it true, some of it not true. And often what we encounter is that we encounter two choices when we have this information. One is to escape from it and to escape in the triviality. Some of the ways that we escape is celebrity news, and my favorite way, again, cat videos and the trivial nature. Because sometimes information is hard. It makes us uncomfortable. It makes us hard to figure out what is relevant, what is not, what is true. And some of it is very hard to read, frankly, or watch, especially when we're looking at news and information about world hunger, suffering, the wars, terrorism. So that makes it very difficult for us. The other way to make sense of all this information, Karl Rahner talked about, is to escape into an oasis, where information is almost like this desert, this unfathomable desert of unsystematized information. And so in our attempts to make sense of it, we escape in this desert from oasis to oasis, trying to find a place where we can feel comfortable. One of the most problematic things with information is that it sometimes makes us feel on edge, especially when that information is contrary to what we believe. Now, sometimes people do this. They escape from oasis to oasis in the desert to find people that think the same way, that believe the same things, and that I can feel comfortable sharing information that I believe everyone else in my little oasis believes. And we get really comfortable here. It's also, we can think of this as our comfort zone, where I don't want any sort of information that questions the things that I hold to be true. We do this all the time, especially when we look back at 2016 in the ways we think about politics. We want to be right when we look at information. We want to make sense of the information, give it purpose, give it clarity. And most of all, as human beings, we don't want to be wrong. Now, this is not the greatest way of dealing with this information, because what happens is that eventually the oasis, at least in Rahner's terminology, almost becomes a sort of a mirage. That what we think is this oasis of information, a place where post-truth kind of merges in it, and we feel that we're getting nourished and fed by this. But what in a sense happens is that post-truth gives us, when we're just out searching for information that confirms our own biases, what post-truth gives us leaves us malnourished. In the desert, we end up eventually dying of thirst, because the information that we thought was important turned out to be a mirage. Now, Rahner presents a third option. Might be seen to be crazy, but his option was that we should plunge into the desert, into the sea of the unfathomable information, not to just remain comfortable in our oasis, but to go out, Ronner talks about this for a variety of reasons. One of these being is that to be religious, and if we want to understand what it means to be religious, is that we have to encounter the unfathomable, the uneasiness, the unsystematic. And because this is where religion thrives. It thrives in the questions and answers. It thrives in searching and questioning truth. That truth is something that is not just on the surface level. That truth is not something that is easily, people can say, I have the truth. But rather, truth is something that is deeper, more mysterious, more life-giving than just what we find on 24-hour news cycles, what we find on social media and BuzzFeed and Twitter. Ronner's pointing to something that I think we can, especially when we think about when Jesus describes himself as, I am the way, the truth, and the life in the Gospel of John. And I thought about that in particular. What does Jesus mean by saying, I am the truth? And what does that mean in a post-truth age? Does it have any meaning at all? If we're looking at the Greek word for truth, aletheia, it means to uncover, to reveal, to disclose, to remove that veil that separates us from truth. Jesus is the one who unveils. And so what Ronner is talking about here, plunging ourselves into the unfathomable desert, the abyss, is that if we really want truth, truth is hard. Truth means sorting and going through this information, questioning, looking at one piece of information and asking, how do you back this up? What are the facts for this? There's another bit of important information that I think is for being religious in a post-truth age and also being an informed person in a post-truth age. It's the idea of doing the truth. The Gospel of John also talks about, in chapter 3, about that one should do the truth, to do good. If we live in a post-truth age, it makes it that much more harder to do truth. If I'm comfortable in my oasis of information, or if I shut myself away in the triviality of social media, I'm less capable of doing the truth in my community. I'm less capable of being actively involved in my nation, in my world. I'm less able to help those, to do good in the world. Because it's not just a matter of theory. Truth is not just a matter of knowledge, but it's also a matter of action. Post-truth stifles this by saying, I believe what I believe, doesn't matter if it's true or not, but it's what I believe. And it eliminates that human spirit to question, to ask really the hard questions about our world. And it's easy. It's easy to be with people who think the same way, who act the same way, and who believe the same things that I do. That's easy. Anyone can do that. The most hard thing is to plunge into the desert, the unfathomable information, and to encounter those that think differently than from me, those that look differently from me, and those that challenge what I believe and make me think further about what are the things that I hold to be true, and were they really true or just a mirage? Doing the truth is just as important as knowing the truth. And I feel that if we're going to survive in this post-truth age, if it really is something that is happening, if we're going to survive, we have to return to this idea of also doing the truth. And that means calling out social injustice. That means calling out for equality. And that means doing the hard work that it takes to be religious men and women, to be informed men and women in our culture, in our society. Truth is not easy. It's meant to be hard. But what I think for the post-truth age does present for us is an opportunity to do more and to really think about truth itself. It gives us the opportunity to reflect and ask ourselves, have I really been living the truth? Have I been doing the truth? Or am I really living in an oasis and not really challenging my own core convictions and not really seeking the hard questions? Do the truth. And I feel that this is the way to most better effectively counter a post-truth age. Thank you.
Our next TEDx presenter is Charles Reed. He's currently the second lieutenant of the St. Thomas Marching Band. He's also on the track and field team. He's also first lieutenant in the Fort Lauderdale Composite Squadron, and he's a student pilot of a Cessna 150 aircraft and only a few flights away from his private pilot's license. His aspirations include CAP or CAP, which is the Civil Air Patrol, and he hopes to attend the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Please welcome to the stage Charles Reed.
Okay, now some of you might have heard that people are afraid of flying, of heights. 25% of Americans say that they are afraid of heights, and 15% say that they are afraid of flying. I fall into neither of those categories. I ride roller coasters, I climb rocks, I fly, and that's something special. On my 13th birthday, I went to North Perry Airport, and I had my very first Discovery flight. Took off, flew down the coast of Miami Beach, came back, and I was that student that would look out the window and just start to turn. And that was expected of a 13-year-old. But now I'm 17, and I'm on my way to getting my license. I'm a few flights short. But fast forward to February 21st, 2016. I had my very first solo flight. And it was nerve-wracking nonetheless, because I went up with my instructor, and we landed, he got out, and I went up. My leg was shaking just holding the brakes. It was just tap, 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 tap. I was surprised that I actually held the brakes, but I took off and I flew. I flew around the airport and came back. And I have a video prepared, and I want to show you guys it. Now, there might not be many students, many teenagers that you know that fly. I'm one of those select few that do. 7 months forward, I went on my first solo cross country. Now, cross country may be leading in terms of aviation because it's not cross country. It's not here to Miami or here to New York, here to LA. It's anything over 50 nautical miles. So I flew from here to Fort Myers, then to Pahokee and back. It was a total of 3.5 hours. It was tiring. I could have driven that faster. But I sat there in a single engine Cessna 150, two-seater, and just listened to music and flew. And honestly, it was amazing just to see all the sights, to see test tracks, to see all these different cities that I've never seen before. But it's those special flights that you can do, those special terms, or anything that you can do to better yourself, do it. I'm 17 and I'm flying. Now, most of you might know a pilot that's 30 years old, 40 years old, but why wait now to do something that you want to do? I know what I want to do. I want to fly. I want to go to the Air Force Academy. I want to fly this aircraft, this aircraft, this aircraft. But they're all different, and they're all unique. There's a uniqueness to flying. There's a uniqueness to just having goals set. You shouldn't have to wait until you're 30 to make up your mind. Make up your mind now. What's holding you guys back? So when you go and you begin your journey, figure something. Find something that you're passionate about and fly. There's no reason that anything should be holding you back. Now, I may be flying a little Cessna 150 or a Cessna 172 right now. It might only go 70 miles an hour, but it gets me places. It gets me to where I want to go. No one cares about how you begin or what you do in the middle. They only care about how you end. And I want to end this with one of the great sayings. For once you've touched the sky, you will never want to leave the earth, or you will always want to be there. And that was Leonardo da Vinci. You will always look to the skies, because once you've been there and once you've tasted it, you want to go back. Now, if there's anything that's holding you back, analyze it. See, what is holding me back? Think about it, and say to yourself, I can overcome this. There's no reason why you can't. Thank you.
Charles. Our next performer is going to be doing a musical piece, Andrea Chacon and Gabriela Pinero.
what is the intersection between technology, art, and science? Curiosity and wonder. Because it drives us to explore. Because we're surrounded by things we can't see. And I love to use film to take us on a journey through portals of time and space, to make the invisible visible. Because what that does, it expands our horizons, it transforms our perception, it opens our minds, and it touches our heart. So here are some scenes from my 3D IMAX film, Mysteries of the Unseen World. There is movement which is too slow for our eyes to detect. And time-lapse makes us discover and broaden our perspective of life. We can see how organisms emerge and grow. How a vine survives by creeping from the forest floor to look at the sunlight. And on a grand scale, time-lapse allows us to see our planet in motion. We can view not only the vast sweep of nature, but the restless movement of humanity. Each streaking dot represents a passenger plane, and by turning air traffic data into time-lapse imagery, we can see something that's above us constantly but invisible, the vast network of air travel over the United States. We can do the same thing with ships at sea. We can turn data into a time-lapse view of a global economy in motion. And decades of data give us a view of our entire planet as a single organism, sustained by currents circulating throughout the oceans and by clouds swirling through the atmosphere, pulsing with lightning, crowned by the aurora borealis. It may be the ultimate time-lapse image, the anatomy of Earth brought to life. At the other extreme, there are things that move too fast for our eyes. But we have technology that can look into that world as well. With high-speed cameras, we can do the opposite of time-lapse. We can shoot images that are thousands of times faster than our vision. And we can see how nature's ingenious devices work. And perhaps we can even imitate them. When a dragonfly flutters by, you may not realize, but it's the greatest flyer in nature. It can hover, fly backwards, even upside down. And by tracking markers on an insect's wings, we can visualize the airflow that they produce. Nobody knew the secret, but high speed shows that a dragonfly can move all four wings in different directions at the same time. And what we learn can lead us to new kinds of robotic flyers that can expand our vision of important and remote places. We're giants, and we're unaware of things that are too small for us to see. The electron microscope fires electrons, which creates images which can magnify things by as much as 1,000,000 times. This is the egg of a butterfly. And there are unseen creatures living all over your body, including mites that spend their entire lives dwelling on your eyelashes, crawling over your skin at night. Can you guess what this is? Shark skin. A caterpillar's mouth. The eye of a fruit fly. An eggshell. A flea. A snail's tongue. We think we know most of the animal kingdom, but there may be millions of tiny species waiting to be discovered. A spider also has great secrets, because spider silk thread is pound for pound stronger than steel, but completely elastic. This journey will take us all the way down to the nano world. The silk is 100 times thinner than human hair, On there is bacteria. And near that bacteria, 10 times smaller, a virus. Inside of that, 10 times smaller, 3 strands of DNA. And nearing the limit of our most powerful microscopes, single carbon atoms. With the tip of a powerful microscope, we can actually move atoms and begin to create amazing nano devices. Some could one day patrol our body for all kinds of diseases and clean out clogged arteries along the way. Tiny chemical machines of the future can one day perhaps repair DNA. We are on the threshold of extraordinary advances, born of our drive to unveil the mysteries of life. So under an endless rain of cosmic dust, the air is full of pollen, microdiamonds and jewels from other planets, and supernova explosions. People go about their lives surrounded by the unseeable, knowing that there's so much around us we can see forever changes our understanding of the world. And by looking at unseen worlds, we recognize that we exist in the living universe. And this new perspective creates wonder and inspires us to become explorers in our own backyards. Who knows what waits to be seen and what new wonders will transform our lives? We'll just have to see. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next TEDx performer is Jose Francisco. He's been playing piano since the age of 6 and training for 12 years under a classically trained teacher from Juilliard School of Music. And although Jose has studied all periods of music, from Baroque to contemporary, his favorite period both to study and to perform is the Romantic period, as exemplified by his current Chopin-dominant repertoire. Aside from his piano career, he's also a performing magician, nationally ranked extemporaneous speaker, and a volunteer at the Cleveland Clinic of Florida. Jose is attending Stanford University in the fall. Jose Francisco. Our next TEDx performer, Skylar Hooley, is a member of the class of 2020 here at St. Thomas Aquinas. She's part of the Mu Alpha Theta Math Honor Society and was on the crew for the 2017 play. Skylar plays the flute, the piano, and the ukulele, and she loves her art and music and is excited to talk to you all about her passions for creative means of expression. Please welcome to the stage, Skylar Hooley.
With the modern age we are in, and the rate at which we're moving forward, there is one thing that is key to our success in the future: creativity. But what even is creativity? What does it mean? Am I creative? Are you creative? Creativity has so many different types that the concept itself is hard to grasp at times. But to start simply, the definition. Creativity is the use of original ideas or imagination. Of course, this can really mean as many different things as there are people, but at its core, there is individuality and expression. And there are so many different ways to express it. First, there's art. Art can be anything from the Mona Lisa to a doodle drawn in the margin of chemistry notes. Art could even be a color choice. You may have noticed that all of my slides are purple. That's because purple is the color of creativity. But creativity and art is a pure form of expression. Art is an intuitive skill, but it can only be grown if it's nurtured. This requires starting with young children. Not expanding their knowledge on creative means can close them off to opportunities they never even knew that they had. People can take from art that you don't only have to express yourself verbally. And then there's music. Creativity can also be found in music. Playing an instrument is actually one of the few activities that engages all parts of the brain. A Stanford study shows that playing an instrument involves parts of the brain which we use for paying attention, making predictions, and updating events in our memory. Music is a way for children to learn to think outside of the box and to express themselves non-verbally. Of course, there's other forms of fine arts. There's dance, theater, I could go on. But creativity even extends that. Creativity can be found in more unexpected places. One key example of this is math. Math may be seen as a mundane subject to some of you, but so much creativity is generated through it. With skills learned early on, like graphing, people can go on to make graphic drawings. In fact, Desmos, the online graphing website, holds a contest where participants can enter drawings that they've made themselves. And with things that could be seen boring as angles, interesting shapes are made, like the Pascal's triangle, the Penrose triangle, and even the octocube. But when we see math, we can see with creativity that it even goes farther. Creativity can be found in places that aren't only unexpected, but are also currently relevant. Take technology. It's a perfect example. Technology is something that we use every day, from our car in the morning when you get to school, to a pen that you use to write down your notes, or even something that I'm sure we can all admit that we use a bit too much, our cell phones. But technology has so much creativity in it, from Snapchat filters to digital art. It can go in so many different places. But technology is the devices and innovations that are taking us into the next generation. Young minds are shaping the future. New technologies such as drones are expanding the very opportunity that we have to be creative. But creativity even extends technology. To find creativity, we can look at the very building block of communication: words. In English, an onomatopoeia is a human's interpretation of a foreign sound. These onomatopoeias then go on to make up the framework of poetry. Poetry is expressing emotion by tailoring words together, which surely takes creativity. But of course, not everyone here at St. Thomas is native to English. In fact, so many of them may find a freedom of expression in their own language because they know it best. When I think of creativity in language, a Spanish saying comes to mind: El que con lobos anda, aullar aprende. Literally speaking, this means he who walks with wolves learns to howl. But what does that even mean? In Spanish, this warns of the dangers of following the crowd and of acquiring the habits of those who you surround yourself with. This expression, and others like it, took creativity to even make up. But we can take this expression and look at the complexities that arise with creativity. Not everyone wants to be creative. Why? Because it's hard. Going against the grain is difficult. Art takes time to plan, music takes time to practice, and even those graphic drawings took time to make. Creativity. Creativity lies within each and every one of you, and it can be harnessed by each and every one of you. No matter if it's how you say hello, or how you sign your name, or the socks you wore to school today. Each and every one of you is creative. Creativity can simply be a commentary of the world around you, or creativity can be a change agent. What does it even mean? Creativity is something that is alive within each and every one of you that you can take and you can use every day. Be creative. See what happens.
Our next speaker, Jeffrey Julmus, is a Haitian sprinter, born and raised here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and he competed in the 110-meter hurdles in the 2016 Summer Olympics. He performed well enough to make his heat, and he qualified for the semifinals. Please welcome to the stage, Jeffrey Julmus.
Hello, everybody. Before I start, I'm going to answer the two questions that I get most. Yes, I met Usain Bolt. And yes, I am the guy that fell at the Olympic Games this summer, if you guys don't know. And the question that everybody asked, hurt? Yes, it hurt really bad. But I'm not here to talk about the fall. I'm here to talk about my lessons, the lessons I've learned through making it to the Olympic Games. This Summer 16 Games was not my first. It was actually my second Olympic Games. I made it also in 2012 in London, but that didn't go so well. It was first-time jitters, and I was a little bit nervous, so I didn't make the semis. But this time I actually did make the semis, and in the event of making the semis, I fell at the first hurdle. What I want to talk about most is perseverance. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard the term or the cliche phrase, you can do whatever you want as long as you put your mind to it. I think throughout my whole life and throughout your lives as well, we take for granted of the word cliche. We hear it and we're like, oh, everybody talks about that. Oh, everybody says you can make it anywhere if you want to, but it's the truth. Sometimes I think we need to take the word cliche and accept it and say, when am I going to take the time to actually say, maybe it's true. If everybody's saying it, then I actually can do it. And I had to go through those experiences. My road wasn't easy. Growing up, I was the bad kid. I was the kid that, didn't go to class all the time, got detentions, got suspended. And I never would have thought that, I would, growing up and growing through all those bad experiences, I never would have thought that I would have made it to the Olympic Games. But as a child, when you're competing or when you're outside playing, everybody wants to make it to the highest level. Whether it's a basketball player, they want to make it to the NBA. Football players, they want to make it to the NFL. For me, I was always fast and I was always racing people. So for me, I always wanted to compete at the Olympic Games. But growing up, of course, like I just said, I was bad and, getting suspended here and there. A lot of people didn't think I would make it. And I thrive on proving people wrong, which is perseverance. I've had people tell me I wasn't going to make it. I've actually had a counselor in high school, and this may sound crazy to you guys, but I had a counselor in high school tell my mom that she should withdraw me from school because I will amount to nothing in life. She should withdraw me from school, get me a job at McDonald's because I will amount to nothing in life. From that point on, I changed my life. I was like, first of all, you're not going to tell my mom or me that I'm not going to be anything in life. And I took it upon myself to withdraw myself out of high school. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Wood and Rogers Education Center, but I went to the Wood and Rogers Education Center, and it's a place where I hope none of you guys end up or go. That's where all the kids that get kicked out of school go, the kids that fight, kids that go to jail and can't stay in school. Those are the kids that go to this type of school, and I didn't belong. I had to force myself to go to school every day because it's work at your own pace. You don't have a teacher telling you, hey, do your work. They give you a packet. They say, when you're done with this, you're done with the class. So if you don't finish it, you don't finish the class. And those were the experiences I had in high school, watching fights every day, watching riots. And I had to tell myself every day, listen, I want to run track, and I got to make it to the next level, which at the time was college. I eventually got my grades, and my senior year of high school, which is the last year, of course, I ran track. And it was the only year that I had run track, and I had been talented throughout my whole life. So I had to persevere through you will amount to nothing in life. Nobody makes it out of Wooden Rogers. If you come out here, you're gonna end up like everybody else, which is what they do, is nothing. I did my work, I got my grades, and I ended up competing. When you're at an alternative school, you can compete for your high school, and which is what I did. I competed for Fort Lauderdale High, and I eventually ended up landing a scholarship to a junior college in Concordia, Kansas, in the middle of nowhere. And the reason why I had to go to junior college is because I didn't take the regular path of high school and had good grades and had good test scores. My GPA was low, so therefore my test scores had to be really high, and they weren't. They were average, so I had to go to the junior college route. At junior college, more perseverance. I'm culture shocked. I'm from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a city of 2.3, almost 3 million people. And the population of Kansas is 2 million people. The population of my town was 1,500 people and 700 people in the school. That's a graduating class in the state of Florida and at any high school. So you guys can understand the culture I went through of seeing buildings, seeing roads, and going to see dirt roads, cows, and cornfields. It was culture shock. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to go the junior college route to begin with, because at that time I felt like I was too good for junior college, not realizing that that was a path that I had to persevere from to get to the next level, which is D1 and then eventually the Olympic Games. Through Cloud, I learned a lot. I met a lot of great people, and I ended up loving it. But I had to persevere through some things, like getting in trouble and realizing that I'm in a small town, so everything is a microscope on you, and everything you do, everybody in town knows. If you speak the wrong way, somebody will know. I'm pretty sure here probably not at St. Thomas, but at my high school, if you skip class, there's a chance that you might get away with it. That's not happening at a school where there's K through 12, and the most graduating class they have is a class of 20. So you're not getting away with anything. And it's the same way that it was for me at Cloud County. But fast forwarding, I left Cloud County and eventually ended up at Kansas State University on a full scholarship. And I was told that I wasn't gonna make anything out of my life. I wish I could find a lady right now, but I've yet to find her. But I think those words of telling me that I can't do it or that I wasn't gonna be something is what drove me to be the person that I am and making it to the Olympic Games, because that was the next perseverance, was coaches telling me, you're not good enough. You're okay, but you're not that good. I told you guys before, I raced a lot as a kid. Nobody was gonna tell me that they were faster than me. Coming out of junior college, I was ranked number 2 in the nation, and going into Division I, I was probably in the top 20, which is okay. And I was at a school where it wasn't known to be a hurdle school. It was a jumps and decathlon, for those who run track, like a decathlete school. My coach believed in me, and if anybody here knows what it feels like when someone believes in you, that's all it took to drive me. My coach said, look, we're gonna prove everybody wrong, and that was already my thoughts, was proving everybody wrong, which is another experience that I would like you guys to take in. You can make it through whatever, as long as you put your mind to it. Again, cliche. My coach told me he believed in my abilities. I persevered through 2 knee surgeries on my left knee, 1 knee surgery on my right. I had a blood clot in college. I couldn't compete for the whole indoor season. And when I got back, I was trash. I mean, I was getting beat every meet. I was running, for those of you who don't know time, I was running about 8 seconds, which is like really slow. My personal best is 772. And I remember getting on the bus the meet before conference, and it's conference and then nationals for indoors. I remember getting on the bus after running 8 seconds, and I said, look, I'm winning conference next week. And everybody looked at me, it was like, all right, here we go with Jeff, talking all that, talking about what he's gonna do and he's not gonna do it. And I heard somebody say, yeah, whatever, Jeff, you got it. And I was like, all right. So the next week, of course, here comes conference. I told you guys I had been losing every week. I had been running slow. Nobody believed in me but me and my coach. Right before the meet, my coach comes up to me and he says, hey, how you feeling? And I was like, Coach, I feel like I'm gonna win. He's like, all right, let's get it. And one of my other coaches, he was like, look, I don't know what you're feeling right now, but I hope you know you should know what victory feels like now before you step out on the track. You should know that you're gonna win. Before you get out on this track and get in the blocks, you should know that you already won. And I thought about it, I was like, wow, that sounds good. You might be right. Oh yeah, it's over for all these guys. I'm gonna win this today. And of course, perseverance again. Warmed up, they took us out to the track, and in the middle of us warming up to go run, they said, hey, time system's not working, we gotta bring you guys back. So now we're sitting down and we're cold. To warm up, they don't want us to do anything. And then as soon as I'm taking off my shoes, of course, to walk away, they're like, hey, the system's working again, it's time to go back on the track. So now I gotta rush, put on my shoes, all this stuff is running through my mind. And then I got on the track, I was like, hey, I need a run through. There was like no run throughs. Just get on the track, I'm gonna blow the gun, let's go. All right, runners take your mark, set, gun blows. I'm neck and neck with my competitors from hurdle 1 to hurdle 5. I come off the last hurdle, and all I can hear in my coach's head is saying, you should know how it feels to win. And I won conference. The only person in my school history to ever win a 60-meter hurdle champion. So again, perseverance, people saying that you can't do it, and I ended up doing it. That summer, I ran 13:51, and the qualifying time was 13:55. I get a phone call from a high school coach, and he says, hey, Haiti wants you to compete for them in the Olympic Games. I can't tell you the joy I had at that moment. I was crying, laughing. I didn't know what to do with myself. It was just a great, it was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is really happening. I made it, and this is another lesson that I also wanted you guys to learn, is thinking past your goals. Because at that time, my goal was to make it to the Olympic Games. I made it. Now what? I didn't think I want to make it to the Olympic Games and medal. I just thought I want to make it to the Olympic Games. So now that I got there, and of course, meeting all the Bolts, the guys on the USA team, it was great, but then I forgot the main goal, which is trying to win a medal. So when I got to the big stage, these same lights that are shining on me now, that's how it felt standing in front of, I think it was like 100 or 120,000 people. And my coach told me, when you go out there, don't look left, don't look right, don't look up. Just go out there, set your blocks, and you'll be fine. And of course, the first thing I do, not listening, is walk out of the tunnel, and I looked up, and there's a video I wish I could show you guys, but I'm the only person that's like this. Oh my God. Everybody else is setting their blocks, and I'm the only person, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I'm really here. That's what my heart starts to feel like. And now I get in the race, and my mind is not on racing. I'm focused on, oh my gosh, everybody's here, and they're looking at me. And I didn't make the semifinals. Fast forward to 2016. Throughout those years, a lot of people think that the Olympic Games is our biggest stage. Well, it is our biggest stage, but people think that's the only thing that we do. But there are world championships and many other track meets in between those. So from 2012 to 2016, I had nothing. I hadn't made a world team. I didn't make any CAC games for my country. I didn't win any medals during that time. Everything was out of whack. And everybody thought, all right, maybe it's over for Jeff. I promised myself that I would make it back to the Olympic Games, and this time I'm gonna make it further than the preliminary rounds. Fast forward to 2016, I qualified. How did I qualify? I can't tell you guys. I just know whenever it's time for me to step up and do something that I said I'm gonna do, it just happens because I think it, I talk it into existence. And I remember the track meet last summer. I was in Claremont, and I hadn't been running hot, just like it was in 2012. Hadn't been running too hot, and I get to the meet, and I say, "Yo, coach, I'm qualifying today." He was like, "All right, Jeff, let's get it." All right, coach. We get in the race. I run the exact qualifying time, which is 13:47. The exact qualifying time that it took to make it to the Olympic Games. Now, all cylinders are popping. It's time to get on the track. It's time to go to work. And I went to work, and I was ready to run fast. But then I fell. I made it past the preliminary rounds and got to the semis, and I fell. Now, most people would think when you fall, it's over. I knew that there was a bigger picture, perseverance. I had to make it, I had to finish that race. I fell, the hurdle fell on top of me, it hurt, everything was going on. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just fell in front of millions of people watching and people that are at the actual games. But I got up and I knew that there were people that said I was never gonna make it this far. There were people that thought I didn't even belong with the caliber of athletes that I was with. So I said, you know what, I need to get up and finish this race. And not only that, I had kids watching me. I coach at Cardinal Gibbons High School as an assistant track coach. I know all of my kids were watching. What type of example would I be? And this is all the thoughts that run through my mind within a split second. What type of example would I be if I gave up at this very moment? What type of example would I be to anybody to fall and just give up? Well, I got up, I finished the race. I probably took 10 minutes to get from the warm-up, well, nah, maybe like 20 because I had a whole bunch of interviews. But by the time I got from the warm-up, the actual track back to the warm-up track, I had to be the biggest meme of 2016. Everybody had jokes. My Instagram went crazy. My Twitter went crazy. Memes, jokes, and everybody was laughing. And, you know, growing up, I was a jokester, so I didn't take it hard. You know, it was like, all right, if it was me and I watched somebody fall, I probably would have laughed too. I probably wouldn't have made a meme, but I probably would have laughed at it too. But outside of the laughing, I got more, you know, praise for finishing the race than anything else. And that night when I got back to my room, I got a message on Facebook from actually 3 people, but one lady in particular, because the other 2 were like days later. I had forgot about all of after when I tell you guys this story. I opened up the message, and it was a lady saying she was just flipping through the channels, and she had just stopped at my race. Now, live, they didn't show the race. They didn't show the finish, but I guess at her time or wherever she was, they actually showed me finishing. And she told me she was having suicidal thoughts the whole day. She went from having suicidal thoughts to seeing me finish, and she realized I don't have to give up. Because I seen you finish, it drove me to finish and not give up and not myself. Whew. If only you guys could imagine what I was going through at that moment. Tears rolling down my eyes. I was like, oh my goodness. I can't believe I motivated somebody to this extent. Now, remember when I told you guys when I fell, what I was running through my mind was, oh my gosh, there's so much going through my mind. I should finish. I just fell. Oh my gosh. In a split second. But that lady seen me, and she chose to go on. So again, me persevering through falling, making it to the actual Olympic Games, then getting there, falling, then getting up and finishing, lets you guys know you don't ever give up on your dreams. I know it's cliche. I know you hear it a whole lot. I know you've heard everybody say it, but it's the truth. Whatever you put your mind to, you can do. Don't ever let anybody limit what you have going on in your life. Whether that be your friends, and if it's your friends, they're not your friends. If anybody's telling you you can't do something, you don't want that person around you, because that negativity grows and the thoughts in your head matters. If you think I can't, you won't. I tell my students that, my athletes that all the time. I don't want to hear the word can't, because if you say it, then that's what's going to happen. If you tell yourself you're going to make it, you will make it. So if you guys don't get anything out of anything that I said today, I hope you guys took away that you can persevere through anything, and you can do anything that you put your mind to. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Speaker from Miramar, Florida, and a student here at St. Thomas Aquinas for the TEDx presentations is Wayne DeLeese. Please welcome him to the stage.
What if I told you there was a resource that could be the difference between a penny and $1 billion? This resource is more valuable than money or any commodity in the world. It is more valuable than oil, gold, silver, or anything that you can think of. And on top of that, not everyone has equal access to a lot of money or oil, but everyone has access to this resource that I'm thinking of. It is at everyone's disposal. It does not matter what age, race, or gender you are. What if I also told you that effectively learning to manage this resource will hands down be the greatest thing that you've ever learned in your life? I shall reveal what this precious resource is: time. Whether you like it or not, time affects every single aspect of your life. That's why when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you look at is a clock. How are you gonna watch your favorite TV show when it comes on if you don't know what time they show it? How are you gonna recommend it to a friend, a family member, or a coworker if you don't know what time they show it? And the thing is, I can make time related to every single situation because it is that important. Over here, we have person A. He's living off of welfare. He's receiving government assistance. He's struggling. Over here, we have person B. He's a billionaire. Charities love him because he's always donating, and his kids love him because he could spend so much time with them. All of his bills are paid, and his life is running smoothly. Some of you may be thinking that the biggest difference between person A and person B is wealth or money, but I don't see it that way, and neither should you. The biggest difference between person A and person B is time management. Person A spent his life looking for a quick fix and quick pleasure. He spent his life entertaining himself. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with enjoying yourself, but eventually the money will run out and the curtains will close. Then what? Then what will you do? Person B also liked to enjoy himself, but he realized that he had to dedicate some of his time towards putting structures in place that he could eventually succeed off of. Person B realized that he needed to dedicate some of his time to sharpening his craft, and now he's being rewarded because of it. Now I shall tell you how time affected my life. Starting out, I didn't realize the value of time. I thought that I had too much of it on my hands, so I would watch YouTube videos, Netflix, sports, just to get me by. I would sit on the phone and talk to them for hours about nothing to get me through the day. And that process would have continued had it not hit me one day. I had a headache and I was laying on the couch. As I was watching TV, not feeling well, this phrase just popped into my head out of nowhere. Wow, I really let myself go. And I didn't know how to take that because I had never taken a step outside of myself to assess my life like that before. But I started to notice a pattern. Every single day had consisted of the same things. Get up, eat, watch TV, eat, go on the internet, take a nap, and it would just continue. Then I started to look at myself in the mirror and realize that I gained a lot of weight. I became a shell of myself. There's no worse feeling than looking in the mirror and seeing that you don't look the same as you used to. And that turned me into a very cynical person. I would find any way that I could to put someone else down, especially somebody who was enjoying themselves. And that cycle in itself would have continued had I not realized that no matter how much negative energy I put out into the world, it won't change my struggle and what I'm going through. And so I was presented with a choice. I could either let the negativity continue, or I could make a change. I decided to implement a simple schedule and a workout routine. The biggest takeaway from the workout routine wasn't the results. And I saw a lot of results. The biggest takeaway was that I learned something about myself that I had never thought about before. And that was that I love myself. When you dedicate time to something that you are passionate about, it is an out-of-body experience that you cannot find in other aspects of life. When you dedicate your time to a goal and you achieve it, it changes how you view life. It made me realize my self-worth and my inherent value. Time management is especially important for aspiring teenagers. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." And what that means is that timeliness is paramount. We as teenagers are staring at 2 extremes right in the face: the wealthy and successful, and the poor and struggling. And that can be very daunting, since we have the potential to become either of those things, but it can also be very exciting. And research further cements my point. According to a study done on teen achievement by Brown University, teens who practice good time management experience success in other areas of their life, such as sports, social life, and work. It also reported that teens who practice good time management had less stress. So the next time you feel that you are pressed for time and the weight of the world is on your shoulders, think about my story. Implement a simple schedule. It will work wonders in your life. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next performer, the TEDx St. Thomas Aquinas, is Hannah Rarick. She'll be doing a musical on guitar.
Waited till I saw the sun. Don't know why I didn't come. I left you by the house of fun. wish that I could fly away instead of kneeling in the sand, catching teardrops in my hand. My heart is drenched in wine. You'll be on my mind forever. Out across the endless sea, I would die in ecstasy, but I'll be a vagabond driving down the road alone. My heart is drenched in wine, but you'll be on my mind forever. Something has to make you run. I don't know why I didn't come. I feel as empty as a drum. Don't know why I didn't come. I don't know why I didn't come. I don't know why I didn't come. Some people live for fortune. Some people live just for the fame. Some people live for the power, yeah. Some people live just to play the game. Some people think that the physical things define what's within, and I've been there before. But that life's a bore, so full of the superficial. Some people want it all, but I don't
This is where I live. I live in Kenya at the south parts of the Nairobi National Park. Those are my dead cows at the back, and behind the cows, that's the Nairobi National Park. Nairobi National Park is not fenced in the south where I live, which means wild animals like zebras migrate out of the park freely. So predators like lions follow them, and this is what they do. They kill our livestock. This is one of the cows which was killed at night, and I just woke up in the morning and I found it dead. And I felt so bad because it was the only bull we had. My community, the Maasai, we believe that we came from heaven with all our animals and all the land for herding them, and that's why we value them so much. So I grew up hating lions so much. The Morans are the warriors who protect our community and the livestock, and they were so upset about this problem. So they killed the lions. It's one of the 6 lions which were killed in Nairobi. And I think this is why the Nairobi National Park lions are few. So a boy from 6 to 9 years old in my community responsible for his dad's cows. And that's the same thing which happened to me. So I had to find a way of solving this problem. And the first idea I got was to use fire, because I thought lions were scared of fire. But I came to realize that that didn't really help, because it was even helping the lions to see through the caution. So I didn't give up. I continued. And the second idea I got was to use a scarecrow. I was trying to trick the lions that I was standing near the cow shed. But lions are very clever. They will come the first day, and they see the scarecrow, and they go back. But the second day, they'll come and they say, this thing is not moving here, it's always here. So it jumps in and kills the animals. So one night, I was walking around the cow shed with a torch, and that day, the lions didn't come. And I discovered that lions were afraid of a moving light. So I had an idea. Since I was a small boy, I used to work in my room for the whole day. And I even took apart my mom's new radio. And that day, she almost killed me, but I learned a lot about electronics. So I got an old car battery, an indicator box. It's a small device found in the motorcycle, and it helps motorists when they want to turn right or left. It blinks. And I got a switch where I can switch on the lights on and off. And that's a small torch from a broken flashlight. So I set up everything. As you can see, the solar panel charges the battery, and the battery supplies the power to the small indicator box. I call it a transformer. And the indicator box makes the lights to flash. And as you can see, the bulbs face outside, because that's where the lions come from. And that's how it looks to lions when they come at night. The lights flash and trick lions that I was walking around the cow shed, but I was sleeping in my bed. Thanks. So I set it up in my home 2 years ago, and since then, we have never experienced any problem with the lions. And my neighboring homes heard about this idea. One of them was this grandmother. She had a lot of animals being killed by lions. And she asked me if I can put the lights for her, and I said, yes. So I put the lights. You can see at the back, those are the lion lights. Since now, I've set up 7 bombers around my community, and they're really working. And my idea is also being used now in all over Kenya for scaring other predators like hyenas, leopards, and also it's also being used to scare elephants away from people's farms. Because of this invention, I was lucky to get a scholarship in one of the best schools in Kenya, Brookhouse International School. and I'm really excited about this. My new school now is coming in and helping by fundraising and creating an awareness. I even took back my friends to my community, and we're installing the lights to the homes which don't have, and I'm teaching them how to put them. So 1 year ago, I was just a boy in the savannah grassland, herding my father's cows, and I used to see planes flying over, and I told myself that one day I'll be there inside. So, and here I am today. I got a chance to come by plane for my first time for TED. So my big dream is to become an aircraft engineer and pilot when I grow up. I used to hate lions, but now because my invention is saving my father's cows and the lions, we're able to stay with the lions without any conflict. Ashole, it means in my language. Thank you very much.
You have no idea how exciting it is to hear a story like yours. So, you've got this scholarship.
Yep.
You're working on other electrical inventions. What's the next one on your list?
My next invention is I want to make an electric fence.
Electric fence.
But I know electric fences are already invented, but I want to make mine.
Didn't you already tried it once, right? And
I've tried it before, but I stopped because it gave me a shock.
In the trenches. Richard Terreri, you are something else. We're going to cheer you on every step of the way, my friend. Thank you so much.
Our next performer, James Carballo, will present a drum solo. I'm especially excited to invite our next guest up to speak here at the St. Thomas TEDx event, Peter Pesic. He's a former student of mine and a great one. Peter is a junior here at St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale. He enjoys singing, writing short stories, composing music in his spare time, and he has always enjoyed public speaking and has competed in many debate tournaments, both in his middle school days and here during his high school career. He cherishes the arts and is an active member of the St. Thomas Aquinas High School Choir. And Peter hopes that everyone here will be able to relate to his speech in some way, as he does believe that his topic can apply to anyone in the audience. Speech is called Life at 3-9. I'm happy to invite Peter Pesic here to the stage.
Begin to describe to you some of the ideas that I've gotten for what I should do with my wheelchair for Halloween. Now, this past year, the ideas were decorated as a tank with a turret and all, along with put a horse onto the front and pretend to be a chariot racer. And then, my personal favorite, put a seat onto the side and you and I could pretend to be in a biker gang. I can't help but say, though, the best ideas have come from my closest friends. When they say that they're going to buy me a pair of goggles, strap a V8 to my wheelchair, and allow me to drive myself to school. You know, as one does. But joking aside, the people in my life, even those whom I hold most dear, see me as different. Different in a good way or a bad way. More likely the former, but that separation is still there. I actually hear it most from children whenever I'm in line at the grocery store and I hear the child behind me whisper to his mother, "Why is he like that?" And I can hear the hesitation in her voice when she responds with something along the lines of, "Because he's special." So even though children are the only ones who are so blatant about it, I know that everyone's curious. But the fact of the matter is that I really don't mind. I'm perfectly fine with telling people why I'm like this, how I got to be like this. So let me start off with a show of hands. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of a group of diseases known as muscular dystrophy. All right, so a lot of you. And that's quite common, almost as common as the diseases. 1 in every 40 people is a silent carrier of the SMA gene. Spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA, is what I have. And it's very unique in terms of when it starts to affect the patient. The worst form is SMA type 1, and that is when an infant can make it no past 12 months of age or 12 months of life before their respiratory system just gives up. The most benign form would be SMA type 4, in which a patient won't even know they have it or won't see any symptoms, that is, until 30 or 40 years of age, and their life expectancy is unaffected. I fall right in the middle with SMA type 2. That basically means I've never been able to walk, I have difficulty swallowing effectively, and my respiratory system has been affected. As for my life expectancy, that can fall anywhere between 15 years of age all the way up until 46 years of age, the longest reported case of SMA type 2. So unfortunately, that means I'm going to have to get to that bucket list sooner. I mean, doing a wheelie on top of Mount Everest just might have to wait until the next life. Oh, man. And we know my respiratory system has been affected by this disease. In fact, I try to counter it all I can. For example, I've been singing all my life. Most of my high school career has been spent in this very room, learning music, rehearsing it, and performing it. And that has tremendously increased my breathing control. More recently, I've been pushing myself towards doing a lot of public speaking because it's not only good for your self-confidence, but breathing control as well. Who knew? But whatever I try to do to counteract it, I just can't shake the fact that my life will be cut short. And I know what you're thinking. God, Peter, way to hit us in the face with sadness. And you're right. It's grim talking about your own mortality. And that's why I find it so easy to talk about, though, because I don't ever let it stop me. A lot of people would think because their life is so different from my own, that would be enough for me to just spiral into depression. But that's never been the case. Let me give you an example. So for my fine arts credit this year, I'm taking a film class. And the very first films we watched were silent, black and white films. And the first film, I was watching it, and I remember thinking to myself, man, if I was sitting here in the theater in 1900, I would totally ask for my money back. This is so boring without sound. The only reason I can think that is because having sound in my movies is all I've ever known. Take this example and apply it to my life. A lot of people mention how they would never even think of being in my situation. They wouldn't be able to cope. And they think the same, or they think that I believe the same, but that's never been the case. I've never felt bad for myself because this is all I've ever known to be life. To me, this is life. But that doesn't mean I don't ever acknowledge my disability. Being humble is one thing, being ignorant is another. For example, every time I try to make plans with friends, it always starts out the same with, will I be able to get around your house? Or is there a step to get into your door? More importantly, in my educational career, every year starts out with me asking and emailing all of my teachers saying, is it okay if I type all of my assignments? Simply because of my inability to write more than half of a page before my hand goes limp. So I know how big of a burden I have in my life. I know how big the cross is that I have to carry with me every day. And yet, I can't help but think that this burden has only made me stronger in how I walk with my friends during their darkest days. Just a few years ago, I was speaking to one of my closest friends, and she was just having an awful day. And I told her the truth. I said, people look up to you. You mean a lot to so many people, and someone needs to be the lighthouse, brightly shining for all to see, even during the darkest of storms. She took this in mind and felt tremendously better after I had said this. And this ability of mine, this ability to inspire, I don't think it comes from motivation. I think it comes from love. And that's something the world is really running low on these days. I am almost always seen with a smile on my face. In fact, just the other day, one of my closest friends, Chris, asked me, Peter, how do you stay so positive every day? And I told him the truth. I said, I've always taken life head on with a smile on my face and laughter in my back pocket. And he told me that's a really rewarding way to look at life. And going a little off script here, before giving this speech, I gave it to a smaller audience. And after I'd given it, this person came up to me and told me, Peter, that really, really spoke to me. And I just want to thank you for that, because every once in a while, I lose hope in the positivity in the world, and I feel like I'm the only one who's always positive. So thank you for reviving me. And I just don't know what else to describe it as other than the power of love, because I think that's the best way to deal with fear. Just laugh in the face of it, and it can't do anything to you. It shows you the power of a laugh, the power of a smile, the power of love. And I've been so blessed to have had the same group of tightly knit friends stick with me all the way from freshman year until today, my junior year. So that's the reason that I am the way that I am. the people in my life, my family, my friends, my teachers, everyone. They are the reason that I get up every single morning with a grin on my face. So to answer the question, being in a wheelchair has affected my life in so many ways that I am so blessed to have had this opportunity to connect with so many different people. Now in closing, what's the difference between each and every one of your lives when compared to mine? Well, depending on how you look at it, nothing. You've been wonderful, thank you.
Teachers aren't supposed to have favorite students, but Peter's up there. Our next presentation is a musical one by Sarah Liv Maglioka. Please welcome her to the stage. Our next TEDx speaker, Timothy Lincoln, he's a senior here at St. Thomas Aquinas and heavily involved with campus ministry. In his free time, he likes to read, cook, and he's also been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He hopes to study physics in college on a pre-med track, and he tries to maintain the very best positive outlook on life. His speech, called Bright It Up with a Smile, is next. Please welcome Tim Lincoln to the stage.
Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to ask all of you to answer honestly in your head, what's the first thought that you have when you hear that on a Monday morning and all you can think is, oh my goodness, I swear my bed is the most comfortable place on the planet right now? I'm guessing everyone in this room is thinking in some interesting amalgamation of bitter satire and absolute sincerity. Ugh. I don't want to get out of bed. I would do pretty much anything to not go to school today, to not go to work today, to not have any responsibilities, but to just kind of be more asleep than awake. And I'm sure my parents are laughing at me right now because the thing is, I'm the biggest offender of that, 100%. But what becomes more problematic is when this attitude is something that isn't just getting up in the morning, but it's something that follows you throughout your day. When that desire to be less active rather than more active, more asleep rather than awake, is something that pursues with you into your day to a point where you just think, okay, this is what I have to do today, but I really wish I could just fast forward through it to the end of the day, to what I need to get. And that's when it becomes concerning. Because the thing is, you can count how long you're going to be alive in years and days and seconds. And for such a huge fraction of that, a lot of people are often thinking, you know, this isn't something that I'm enjoying doing right now. I would kind of rather be in bed than working, than studying, than sitting in school, than doing things. And that begs the question of why so many people are so dedicated to living the longest lives they can, but they spend such that huge fraction not enjoying what they're doing, not enjoying themselves, not being happy. The thing is, there are a lot of things in life that you can't control. But people often trivialize what a huge impact there is to be had in how you internally perceive the world. The thing is, maybe whether I like it or not, I'm going to have a math test tomorrow. But that doesn't have to ruin my whole day. I can, you know, after I kind of wake up, I can get out of bed with a smile on my face and say, I'm going to enjoy today. And even when I'm walking into my second period, I can say, you know, this really could go either way. But it's going to be an adventure either way. I'm going to enjoy it. And that ability to internally decide how you're going to respond to a scenario is something that's so profound. And I think the best example I ever saw of it was when I was, I think, 5 or 6, so I guess my sister was about 8, and we were bowling. And I know you guys know me, I'm a pretty serious athlete. So at 5 or 6, I am positive I had like a 10 or 14 pound bowling ball and just kind of lugged it down the lane. Now, when it came back up, I remember we were kind of playing with that cool machine that like spins them up. And my sister's hand got caught in between a ball and my heavy ball. And it got smushed. And her immediate reaction was just to scream, and she was in a lot of pain and she cried. And my dad walked up, and I don't know how he thought of it so quickly. He didn't remember this story, but what he said was, if you stop crying right now, I'll buy you ice cream on the way home. And it worked. My first thought was, this isn't gonna work, this is insensitive, you know, if you're sad, you're gonna cry, and she's in pain, she can't control that. But I have never seen tears dry up faster than when she got excited about this ice cream on the way home. And that really is the exact epitome of how you control how you feel. She was still in pain, but she decided she was more focused on being excited about this ice cream than on held down by this pain in her hand. And you might think, how can this positive shift be something that you can move not from bowling, but something that you can transition over to when you're in school or when you're working or when you're not happy with what you're doing and you wish you could fast forward through that, because that's such a waste that you would want to skip something, skip a part of your life. But that's often how so many people feel at school. You know, I'd rather be asleep. I just want this day to be over. And the first thing is something that I think is so simple, even an 18-year-old can talk about. It's probably one of the only things, if not the only thing, that I can at least think I understand. And that's to smile. I think a lot of people have seen the thing that when you smile, it releases oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and dopamine to your brain, and that will make you happy. So smiling isn't the effect, but it can be the cause of happiness. And the first time I read that, I was a bit younger, and I remember that I was shocked. I didn't believe it. So the next time I got upset, I flexed these muscles in my face, and the immediate feeling I had, it wasn't happiness. It was more of a, why would I want to be sad? This is so much better. And immediately I thought, you know, what this does is it makes me realize that I'd rather be happy, and I have complete control over that. Now, that being said, that's kind of easy coming from me. I'm a student, I'm a senior, it's pretty nice, second semester. I'm going to college. I'm not that stressed about anything. But there are other positions where this still happens, and all that really does is make it more inspirational, more profound. For instance, whenever I go to the supermarket, there's this one guy, I don't know how many hours he works, but every time I go there, he's out. And his job isn't extremely glamorous. It's something that a lot of people would think of as inconsequential, not important, that they would forget. But every time I see him, he's out in the hot sun, 80 or 90 degrees, pushing shopping carts. Every time. Just sweating. And that's something forgettable. Except he's so unforgettable, because what he does isn't think, okay, I need to do whatever I can to get this day over with. What he does is he has this stretches from ear to ear. And every single time that I see him, he's either laughing with parents or joking around with kids. And he turns this thing that so many people would just think, I have to get this over with. This is a necessary evil of work that I have to do to get paid. He takes this and he turns it into something that makes him happy to be alive, that's worthwhile. And he makes other people around him so happy. And that brings me into my second point about how you can make yourself happier. Because when you make other people smile, your brain registers it as altruism, as a sort of giving that reinforces your own happiness. And it works in such a strong way that, say you're the most selfish person on the planet, you can still make other people smile just out of this own desire that it'll make you happier, this desire to be happier yourself. So whether you're entirely selfish or entirely selfless, brightening up other people's days has an amazing impact on you and them, and that's what leads to that ripple that I think everybody wants to try to encourage. Because when you make other people smile, they get happier, and they do the same thing. So why wouldn't you start every single day saying, I want to make someone laugh today, or I want to make someone smile today, or I'm going to give someone a completely genuine compliment today, because it can have such an amazing effect. It's not just about making your life feel like it's more worth living, or about appreciating being awake and active and alive. People work, on average, I think it's 15% more efficiently when they're excited about what they're doing, when they're excited to get out of bed and just give it whatever you got for this math test, which probably isn't a lot. It's such an amazing effect on a society when people are excited to spread that ripple, when people are excited to smile for their sake and for others, that I challenge each and every one of you to try to do it, to start that ripple, to start that huge effect that can spread so far. And maybe it sounds immature or trivial, but it has such a profound effect on a society that I strongly encourage it, and it is amazing. Thank you.
As an artist, connection is very important to me. Through my work, I'm trying to articulate that humans are not separate from nature and that everything is interconnected. I first went to Antarctica almost 10 years ago, where I saw my first icebergs. I was in awe. My heart beat fast. My head was dizzy, trying to comprehend what it was that stood in front of me. The icebergs around me were almost 200 feet out of the water. And I could only help but wonder that this was one snowflake on top of another snowflake, year after year. Icebergs are born when they calve off of glaciers or break off of ice shelves. Each iceberg has its own individual personality. They have a distinct way of interacting with their environment and their experiences. Some refuse to give up and hold on to the bitter end, while others can't take it anymore and crumble in a fit of dramatic passion. It's easy to think when you look at an iceberg that they're isolated, that they're separate and alone, much like we as humans sometimes view ourselves, but the reality is far from it. As an iceberg melts, I am breathing in its ancient atmosphere. As the iceberg melts, it is releasing mineral-rich, fresh water that nourishes many forms of life. I approached photographing these icebergs as if I'm making portraits of my ancestors, knowing that in these individual moments, they exist in that way and will never exist that way again. It is not a death when they melt. It is not an end, but a continuation of their path through the cycle of life. Some of the ice in the icebergs that I photograph is very young, a couple thousand years old, and some of the ice is over 100,000 years old. The last pictures I'd like to show you are of an iceberg that I photographed in Qeqertarsuaq, Greenland. It's a very rare occasion that you get to actually witness an iceberg rolling. So here it is. You can see on the left side a small boat. It's about a 15-foot boat. And I'd like you to pay attention to the shape of the iceberg and where it is at the waterline. You can see here it begins to roll and the boat has moved to the other side and the man is standing there. This is an average size Greenlandic iceberg. It's about 120 feet above the water, or 40 meters. And this video is real time. And just like that, the iceberg shows you a different side of its personality. Thank you.
Next up, we have a musical composition, trumpets by Tyler Kalelia, Kellen Monahan, Anthony Montalado, Sean Garcia, and Rami Eggert. Please welcome them to the stage. Our next TEDx presenter, Isabella Duplessis, is exceptionally driven here at STA, where she actively participates in such programs as freshman leadership. She's also highly active in the sailing varsity team and the debate team at local and national levels. Already eagerly making plans to enter the medical field, Isabella also aspires to work within her community new health innovations for infants and children that are experiencing homelessness. She aspires to be involved and make noticeable differences. Thus, we are sure to hear her voice from many corners. Her speech is on technology, social media, and high school students. Please welcome to the stage, Isabella Duplessis.
In 2010, the iPod Touch 4th generation was released, and it was the cool thing to have. If you didn't have the new iPod, you were simply uncool. Nothing more, nothing less. If you're not my age, I don't think you realize how important it was to have this thing. It was all I asked for Christmas. Okay, and a puppy, but that's it, I promise. And as I ripped my way through gifts that very Christmas morning, I didn't find a puppy. But what I did find is a fresh new iPod. I knew I could finally fit in with all my friends. I messaged them, FaceTime them, and even swipe my way through Temple Run. I quickly became addicted to this new piece of technology, and it became part of my everyday communication. Then around 6th grade, I had gotten my first phone, the iPhone 4S. And just up until a few months ago, I still owned the dinosaur. It had cracked so much that the screen had turned black. In hopes of the new iPhone 7, my mom decided to give me her old BlackBerry. I was not so happy about that, but what I didn't realize is that I was going to learn a lesson from this BlackBerry. And what I learned is the original purpose of a phone. And the original purpose of a phone is to call and/or message, but that simple idea has advanced into a popular addiction. We go from memes to slime to even everyday, ever-changing trends of the 21st century. We invite our friends over only to find out everyone will be on their phones. And individuality is suffering for many of us. We hide behind the screen, conforming to social media, and it suffers for the future generations. Trying to be an individual when social media is all about gaining followers and likes, you'll never be genuine enough to do what you do. Trying through new things makes you an individual, But you will never be present enough in the moment if you have it for the intention of a like or a follow, and you'll never get all the gain that makes you an individual. I question if kids my age will ever do something without the intention of gaining a like or a follower, and it suffers for the future generations. A study, according to Indiana University by psychologists, says that when caregivers are focused on smartphones and technology, the children follow by example, and they get distracted, and they follow all the things that the parents are doing. When they're focused on their iPods, the kids are focused on their iPads. And when they are followers, they will never be present enough in the moment. When we have children, if we're not careful, they're going to want to be our phones. They want to be held and looked at in the same way. So let's change this. Individuality is not easy. As Robert Frost has said, it's always easier to take the path already taken. But I came up here to talk to you all about how we can allow ourselves to non-conform and be an individual. So many of us came up here today to share our stories. My story is sailing and debate. You may think at first, what a weird combination, but all of us do kind of crazy things. So when people ask when I sail, I'll probably say something like, oh, it's really fun or it's really cool, but really it's physically straining and tiring. But the reason I sail is whenever I get on the water, my imagination is refreshed. And the people that sail are hilarious and inspiring to be with. And when people say, why do you debate? Or they most likely will think, what a nerd. I debate because when I learned so many new things. And when you debate across the nation, it's kind of crazy to see how interested people are invested in Pakistan's government or Afghanistan's economic growth. Just last February, I went to Harvard with the debate team. I never thought I would debate at Harvard to debate amongst high schoolers across the nation, and I don't think my parents' wallet did either. But this is what allows me not to conform and to be an individual. And this is how I encourage you to do and try new things to make you an individual. So yes, I get beautiful sunset pictures when I sail and amazing snow photos at Harvard, but I don't let social media be my inspiration. Now, before I tell you guys what to do, I'm gonna make it clear that I'm not gonna be your mom today. I'm not gonna tell you to put your phone down. I'm not gonna tell you to go play outside. But what I am going to tell you is what social media is. Social media is made and to manipulate your thoughts and make you addicted to your phone or computer to constantly check it. And I think that if you keep in mind that you are being manipulated, that you can put your phone down just for 1 minute. A study at UCLA equates that when you get the same brain sequences from winning the lottery or eating chocolate to getting addicted to your cell phone. So I urge you all today to put down your cell phones if you're thinking to just post something to be better than your friend, or to say, hey, I'm doing this, look how much fun I'm having. If that's why you're posting something, then put down your phone and realize that this is what social media is doing to you. Be an individual. Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to welcome to the stage Music Piece by Aime and Noah. Please help me welcome Amy.
told me it was all good. When I saw you and her talking, something deep down in my soul said, cry, girl. When I saw you and that girl walking around, ooh, I would rather go blind, boy, than to see you walk away from me, child. Ooh, so you see, I love you so much that I don't want to watch you leave me, baby. But most of all, I just don't want to be free now. Ooh, I was just sitting here thinking of your kiss and your warm embrace. Ooh, when the reflection in the glass that I held to my lips now, baby, revealed the tears that are all on my face. Ooh, baby, baby, babe, I'd rather be blind than to see you walk away from me. And baby, baby, babe, I'd rather be blind, boy, than to see you walk away from me. Ooh, and baby, 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 I'd rather be blind, boy, than to see you walk away from me. Baby, 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 I'd rather be blind, boy, than to see you walk away from me.
Beautifully done by Amy and Noah. And our last and final speaker today, Sandy Dennis, born and raised in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. She's on the track team, shot put and discus. She also is an aspiring cardiovascular surgeon, so starting her path into the medical field. Please welcome Sandy Dennis.
Hi. So, I can infer that just by my appearance, you may already have an idea of who I am. From the way that I styled my hair today, to the way I'm dressed, and the way that I am a black female, and how I'm tall. But these are just characteristics to add on to identify me from the huge group of freshmen here. See, my identification card, which is my body, contains information such as where I was born, to when I was born, and the nationality that I am. But this is more than who I am. This is not what defines me. See, I was born in Haiti, and I came from the family of the Lorat. My grandmother, she wasn't capable to pursue what she wanted to do because she was part of a large family, and she was born in Belade. These are actual footage of where she was born. And here in the mountains, as a child, she was capable to enjoy the beautiful scenery, but then again, she was limited to what she could do. And being part of a large family at a young age, she had to limit herself, so she had to work at a young age, and she also had to quit school and be able to take care of the family. This is more pictures of where she came from. But since my grandmother was limited to what she could do, she also had to carry that label that she wasn't capable to, her children wouldn't be capable to do what they wanted to do, which followed on my mother. My mother herself was born in Belade also. And these are also more pictures. And this is actually her house. But my mother herself, she was also placed on the same labels that my grandmother was placed on. And my mother, she had to face these and define them and break barriers. And that's when I come through. I was a child of both my grandmother and my mother. But my Haitian identity does not follow my ancestors' past. Because I was capable to do one thing that I am using right now. I'm able to use my words. See, words are just like numbers. When placed together, they equal greater value. Words allow me to communicate who I am, to give you a perspective of my ideas. Even though my mother and my grandmother came from a place that looks like this, that doesn't make me any different because I have one thing that all of you have. I have words to pursue what I want to do, to advance in education, to go to places that I never thought I would be able to. See, my words allow me to communicate and to pursue what I want to do. I can become a doctor in the future. I can become an astronaut. And all I have to do is focus on one main thing, to focus on my words to use to advance in education, to be able to provide my thoughts in order to go forward in life. So one thing you should always do, allow the world to know who you are. Share your thoughts, use your words, because one day you'll never know the opportunities you'll be given, as much as all the opportunities I've been given today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. That concludes the St. Thomas Aquinas TEDx. Just want to thank everybody for coming. It's really neat to see all the preparation that goes on behind the scenes, the speeches, the musical performances, all the confidence building up, our guest speakers, and then for them to just come out here and totally knock it out of the park is really a great treat. Before we wrap up, I just want to welcome to the stage the teachers and everybody else that helped out for backstage to come out and be recognized, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Come on up.